everybody. We are here today with a guitar player and a band leader here in Kansas City, Steve Andrew. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I met you at your guys' jam down at the Firehouse. How long have you guys been doing that jam?
In February it'll be 4 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. It's definitely one of the
Thank
better ones in town, and I know you guys and Dave's that he has on Sunday. You guys both have a very well attended jam. I mean, it's been pretty consistent like that, right?
Right. Yeah. It's been great.
Yeah. And what are the other two? Who's your drummer? I can never remember his
John
name.
Hobbs.
John Hobbs, and then
Blends
who's
with us,
the bass?
and Steve McBride.
Steve
playing
McBride.
bass.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those guys are really, really good players.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
They can hang with anything people are throwing at them in general, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Good as can be expected.
Mhm.
We get some crazy requests sometimes.
Yeah. Doesn't every band. I mean,
Yeah.
they come up and
Yeah.
expect you to know every song
Right.
ever written.
Right. Right.
And we don't, unfortunately. But
That's right.
but yeah, I definitely want to get into the open jams here in a minute. But for those who don't know you, talk us or take us through kind of a couple minute version of your kind of gigging past or musician history.
Well, I started about 40 years ago. I'm 61, and I started actually younger than that, but really actually gigging around town. I was about 21 when I started doing that, and we're playing pretty simple stuff. I'm still playing pretty simple stuff, but I like it because it's open. I'm referring to blues and pretty, blues infused or blues oriented rock tunes, which is what I grew up on. Grew up in the '60s when all that was going on, the Motown, and then there was Cream, and there was Grand Funk Railroad, which was a big influence on me. Just the singing and the aspects. So, just began playing, and I ran into Jan Lamb, who's a musician around town. Or jamming Jan Lamb. We put a band together, and we were playing just whatever was popular at the time. This would have been in probably the '70s.
Yeah.
And the bass player started playing the bass line to "The Thrill Is Gone," and I loved it. I need to know more about that. I had already been listening to Derek and the Dominoes' Layla album, which has a blues tune on there called "Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out," and it's a straight up beautiful blues tune. A lot of people will know it as the acoustic version, which is a version he did back in the pubs in England. But this is a straight up blues version, and Dwayne Allman's playing on it. So I had those two influences, and then I began to really find the blues. There was a blues jam in Kansas City at Blaney's with Larry Van Loan and the Colt 45 with Rick Hendricks and those guys, and then later Ed Yoakley and Mike O'Neill playing drums, and that was my first experience at a jam session.
Yeah.
So you get up there, and I could improvise a little bit, but I didn't really know my way around. But those guys kind of took me under their wing and really helped me get that started, to actually get a blues band going and trying to play that around town.
Yeah.
At the time, just what was going on back then, disco music was popular. So we found ourselves, if you wanted a gig, you had to play that stuff. We gritted our teeth and played it. And then right after that, country came out, and then we got Boot Scoot Boogie and Larry and Willie. And I'm not knocking this music. It just wasn't for me. It's just not what I wanted to play. But that's what you had to play if you wanted to play around town. Finally, that faded. Then we began to get, I think we were into the 80s by then. But the 70s stuff, the Allman Brothers, the Clapton, all those bands back in there really caught my eye. And really, that's what I still want to play.
Sure.
So
So to stop you there for a second, so you started doing rock and then kind of experienced the blues sort of for the first time in a way, in a real way, right? And then you went to a jam, right? So that maybe is a little bit different.
That's right.
So you were gigging on rock before you
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
putting basement bands together. We
Sure,
were playing
yeah.
wherever or someone would allow us to play, and we weren't very good. Just like, you know,
Most
that's just
20-year-old
how it
bands.
was.
Yeah.
But I got into the depth of the blues. I mean, I really researched the players and, you know, really started buying records. And
Yeah.
we were buying records back then. It was before finally cassettes came along,
Sure.
8 tracks and cassettes. But anyway, that was my deal, and that's still my deal. That's where I'd like to just stay. The B.B. King, the Albert King, all those guys are kind of my. But I love the rock stuff too.
Sure.
You know, because I don't want to play, you know, all blues all the time. But the rock stuff I like is blues oriented,
Yeah.
and it talks about real
Allman
life.
Brothers
and,
is super bluesy
yeah.
oriented. Yeah.
Right. So you're talking about real life here. That kind of music moves me, and that's why I play it.
That's cool. Yeah. And then I think we were talking right before we started about you had this big moment, and then it sounds like you took a little bit of break there, huh?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. So I probably was about late 70s. I was pretty heavily into those, starting in my blues deal, and played up through the 90s up to about 2002. And you know, as a musician in this town, you're probably not going to make a living, and you're sure not going to make a good living doing nothing but playing music, unless you're
Meaning
playing in the
120, 300,000 a year. That ain't
it's
happening,
just not
right?
there,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
locally in Kansas City. I mean, if you know, things you get discovered or you're whatever, maybe you know, you're not going to do it here in Kansas City. I guess is my point. So it's a good part-time job.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what the music business for most of us local guys is. I have a banking career, and at that point in 2002, I had risen up through the ranks far enough that I couldn't stay out late at night.
Yeah,
The gigs were, you're playing till 1 o'clock, and that's when you stop playing. You still got to pack up your gear. You still got to get home. You're probably not ready to just go right to sleep. You're still
Right.
wound up, and I
Yeah.
got a board meeting at 7, and you know, it just was just too much. So I stopped until I retired, which turned out to be 2011. And 2012, you know, I just decided to get this going again. This is what I wanted to do with my spare time. Now that I'm retired, where I can do whatever I want. Let's get back to that.
That's great.
And so now I'm back, and I've been back 5 years now.
Yeah. Can you? So you can't go to sleep after a gig? I can't either.
No.
I'm so like.
No. You would think you'd be exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, because I have. I don't just bring my guitar stuff. I usually bring the PA system too. And you know, by the time you finish and you break all that down, you get it loaded up into your car. That's another 30 minutes, and then it's
Chat with a
drive
bunch of
home.
knuckleheads.
Yeah. Well, yeah, some of them are knucklehead. No, I'm teasing.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to chat with
We're
other
all
folks that
knuckleheads.
come.
Come on, let's just be honest here. We're a bunch of rejects.
Wonderful. I love talking to the folks that come
Oh,
out,
yeah.
whether they're players or just folks that listen. But no, I get home and I gotta have a couple beers or a couple drinks to get me to sleep.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
So, but you know, that's what translates. I mean, how long does this gig last? Let's say I do a Firehouse gig and I play from 7:30 to 10:30. It starts at 4:30 or 5 and I'm loading my gear in my car.
Yeah.
You know, and finishes at, you know, 11:30 when I'm finally leaving the Firehouse after I've finished and packed up all my gear, and now I'm finally in my car driving home.
Yeah.
So it's not, you know, I'm only working being paid for 3 hours, but it's a lot longer than 3 hours.
Yeah.
And all the musicians out there know that. That's just how it is. But if you're trying to do another job on top of it, you know, it becomes tough. So I'm thrilled to be retired and have to just do what I love to do.
Yeah, and even before we move on for that, I mean, that's a big thing that I wanted to talk about on this show is sort of the getting that in our head of what you're getting yourself into a little bit, and being really having all of us musicians kind of let some people know that you know, it can be really awesome, but just don't be surprised when you're, you know, when you realize that you're probably not going to make a full living on just straight gigging. you know, and we, I mean, I don't know if I know anybody in town that can really just straight gig. There's not very many. We all have to have our day thing.
Yeah.
And that day thing can look many different ways,
Yeah.
right? You know,
And it may be
but-
teaching.
right?
I
Which
think
is
a lot of the
fine,
guys
yeah.
teach,
Mhm.
and they're able to make things work that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great players in town. I mean, maybe they're playing with the orchestra, man. Maybe
Mhm.
they're doing lots of other deals. Plus, they teach. You can make a living that way.
Oh, sure.
But straight up, just gigging around town,
It's
playing
just
in
we're not-
local restaurants and bars and stuff,
Yeah.
well, it's a good part-time job.
Yeah. I know people have been talking about even the glory days of the 90s in here in town, because in the jazz world, we talk a lot about the 20s and 40s. That whole era was the heyday, you know.
Mhm.
But I heard a lot of people talk about even in the 90s here in town was a pretty good time. They were talking about they were able to gig 5 nights a week, and they had a
Mhm.
horrible band. You know, they're like, we had a crappy band and we had that many gigs.
That's
you know?
when they used to have music
Yeah.
5 nights a week. I mean,
Mhm.
there were actually bars in town that did that.
Yeah.
And you could be the house band there and play there 5, 6, 7
I
nights
know
a
that's
week.
crazy to me that they had 5
Right.
nights in a row, or that was their club,
Yeah.
sort of. You
Yeah,
know?
that was their job.
Yeah.
Every night they were there playing,
Yeah.
same stuff. But, if like Christine's Firehouse has music 4 nights a week,
right.
which is not a lot of places are doing that.
Yeah, there's some, but there's not very many. The
Very
Phoenix has a lot of music.
Mhm.
BB's has a lot of
Mhm.
music. The Majestic, the Green
Mhm.
Lady, Knuckleheads. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
there's some places that are doing
Right.
it, but
But how
not as
many bands are out there chasing those gigs, Rob?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, there's a lot of competition,
I know.
and that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
we got a lot of great musicians in Kansas
Mhm.
City, more than people probably realize around the country. So
Does that push out the riffraff a little bit too?
well, you got to be good enough to get hired back.
Hmm.
Let's put it that way.
So is that a good thing in a way? You could look at it
I
that
think
way,
it is.
you
I
know?
mean, I think it raises everybody's level of playing.
Mhm.
I mean, if you want to do this, you're going to have to get good enough.
Yeah.
And it's not always who's the best player; it's who can draw the most people.
Mhm.
Because let's face it, we're really selling booze for
Mhm.
the club
And
owners
food, yeah.
and food. So if you can't keep people there, and they're going somewhere else, you're not going to get hired back.
We're kind of no good to them at that point, right?
Right.
The club owner.
Right?
Yeah.
We are expendable,
Hmm.
or can
Yeah.
be. Some places you really need the music to keep it going.
Yeah.
I mean, it just fits. It just works.
Hmm.
So, but it's interesting
Yeah.
because there's a lot of bands in this town, and a lot of them are pretty good.
Hmm.
I would say, most of them who are playing regularly, pretty good musicians.
Hmm. So let's talk about that a little bit with the idea of kind of running a band. I ran a little rock thing for about 3 or 4 years in town. It was a really good experience to me.
Mhm.
We didn't get anything really to happen, but we did 60 shows or something, or more than that, probably
Mhm.
60 shows total. And it was really interesting about talking to club owners, which I'd never really done before, and just having the picking a set list and like dealing with the personalities of a band and all of that kind of stuff was really new to me. And I'm glad
Mhm.
because I see this whole other like running a bit, because I was always sort of like a studio hired gun kind of a guy, and then I got to see the other side, and that was really interesting. What was with running a band or being in a band or whatever, what's a thing in a band that has really worked really well in the past with any of your, or the
Well,
one you have now, or what, or
You mean it's the style we play? Or
anything, the song choices, dealing club on, whatever.
Sure.
You can answer that however you
Sure.
want.
That's a real open-ended
It-
question.
right, yeah,
There's a lot
that's
to
why I
talk
wanted-
about
yeah.
there. But I mean, if you're deciding you're going to start a band, I mean, I think you need to decide what you want to play. I mean, you have some reason to start a band, and is what you want to play marketable? And can you find other players that want to play what you want to play? And if you want to get good players, you got to have gigs, because if you don't, someone else does.
Mhm.
It's basically a mercenary business, or has grown into that, where you if the phone rings and you don't have a gig, you take the gig. I mean, it used to be you'd have to check with your buddies first and see if your band was, are we open that date or what? Do you care if I, that sure doesn't happen anymore. It's whoever calls and offers the most money, that's where you're going. So if you're a band leader, you're trying to put all this together. If you want to get the good players for a good product, then you better be picking the right tunes that people want to hear. Who's your audience? And are they going to come show up? The stuff I do, people my age are the ones that want to hear it, and they're growing old. They're getting older. So I've noticed a lot of '80s stuff happening lately. It seems to be the latest. Because in the '80s, I was doing a retro '60s stuff.
Yeah,
we were doing When a Man Loves a Woman and all those kinds of things, and the old Motown and stuff. And so, if you're doing that, that's already been done several times. Here we are in 2017, and in the '80s, we were rehashing the '60s. That was oldies in the '80s.
Right.
We're 30 years past that. So, for me, the blues in the '70s, the blues influenced is music that is kind of timeless. I mean, it works for everyone. Now, the younger folks coming in at least can appreciate it. Maybe they learn from it if they're players or if they're listeners. But if you come up to me at a gig and ask for some Radiohead, I'm not going to have any for you. That's not my.
Well, that stuff's really hard. I mean, there's some stuff in the '70s that is hard as well, but there's like Radiohead is just not something you just pull out. I'm very familiar with Radiohead.
So it's not something you just say, hey, let's learn a few popular tunes because that's we kind of need that to kind of keep the young people around. Well, it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to make some commitment to it. It's tougher. I'm not saying it's tougher music, but you got to decide you want to spend the time on it.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't like it, you're not going to enjoy spending that time on it.
So to stop you there, you were talking the last minute or two. You've been talking about kind of making a goal, right? I mean, with your band in general, like what songs are we gonna do, right? What genre, you're generally speaking about what is our goal in our band? What kind of players am I needing to get? What kind of songs are we gonna do? And then you mentioned something just a second ago about like what clientele are we playing for? Are we going to try to appeal to the entire world with this one band? Or are we playing to 40 through 70-year-olds?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, so I mean, I think that's what happened with our band is that I was trying to be too eclectic. I was doing too many because I had these jazz players. I'm like, okay, let's throw a jazz tune in here, and then a classic rock song, and then a '90s tune, and then an instrumental, and then all of a sudden we'd go to each club, and they'll be like, "Well, you're not really jazz, but you have jazz players, so I don't really know what to do with you." And then we'll go to the rock bar, and then they'll be like, "Well, you guys are too jazzy for us," So like they didn't know what to do with us really because we didn't have that goal, or I didn't have that goal.
So I think you got to take a look around you and see what's available. And in this town, for instance, in the earlier days, there was a lot more country around here. I mean, there were lots of country bars. You could get a country gig easier than you can get the other ones.
Oh yeah.
And that completely changed, which I really don't understand what happened there, but
yeah, I mean,
it's not out there like it used to be.
Not in this town.
So when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, because if you get good players and you got no gigs, you're not going to have a band very long. They'll be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Where they do have gigs.
Yeah, and then you said something else that was interesting that I think a lot of musicians struggle with is the idea of playing what the crowd wants to hear or playing what you want to play.
There's a way to do that.
Yeah, talk about that.
And we did it. You can. Everybody. This is no secret. Everyone does it. If you love to play the blues and you're in a place that doesn't want to necessarily hear all blues, you can play some blues, but you got to play what they want to hear too, and then they'll accept you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's I don't know. Blues is pretty well accepted anymore. It's kind of become cool to like the blues. Isn't that crazy? I mean, I love it because of what it says to me. But some people just, well, that's what I should like, so I like it. But you go play a rock, or like I deal with it with country right now. I have to play a few country songs because and then they're happy as long as they've heard some country music. They'll accept whatever else I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like country music. I don't want you to think I don't like country music. I like it just fine. It's
Sure.
just not my
Yeah.
forte, not my cup of
Yeah.
tea. I sound like a blues player trying to play country. That's what
We
happens.
can talk. I talked to TJ Earhart about that the other day. How it's there's a lot of guys in town that are blues players, and they are playing. They're a blues guy trying to play country,
Right.
and you can hear it.
Yeah.
And they
You can hear it the other way.
Yeah, and you can hear it.
You
The
hear
other
the country
way, yeah,
players
Yeah.
trying to play the blues,
Right.
and hey, you can make it work. I mean, they're based the same. Basically, they're just different styles.
One thing I know that we tried to do right at the end of my rock band that I had is I had hired a bunch of jazz guys, and they were even my age, and they were out of control. I mean, it just they could read charts in 2 seconds. I mean, they're a killer. So I tried to pick stuff that, and Lonnie McFadden was sharing this to me one time. He was like, "There's those 20 tunes that we all don't really want to play, right? It's the Mustang Sallies and the Sweet Home
Yep.
Alabamas and the Brick House and the
Yep.
there's that 20 list."
Yep.
But he's like, there's another 1,000 that are perfectly acceptable for this
That's
bar right now, and so with our band, we tried to do, you mentioned Allman Brothers, stuff like Ramblin' Man, where it was fun enough for us because it's a fun tune,
Right.
but it's very well known, and it's exciting. It's got, I look at it as those three kind of things that you want in a song, where you're not sitting up here playing Mustang Sally every day, but there's 1,000 more blues songs you can do, or rock or whatever, and we don't want to feel like the performing monkey, right? Playing all this regular stuff, but what happens when you don't play a bunch of songs people know?
They leave. They get
Yeah.
disinterested and they leave, and now your person who's hired you is not happy.
Yeah,
So, I mean, you need to be able to play the Brick House and whatever. Your job is to sell alcohol. When they dance, they get thirsty. That's just real simple. And by the way, some of those tunes, and we talk about musicians not necessarily wanting to play it, Mustang Sally's always the first one,
in the blues world, in the other
Well,
things,
in any
it'd be-
world,
it
I think.
probably any world,
We have
yeah.
a bar in town that refuses. If you play there, they will not hire you back.
Yeah,
They'll
wow.
fire you. That's the Eclipse and Radio.
Right, yeah, they have that big sign, no Mustang. That
No
sign
Mustang
cracks me
Sally.
up. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is, I mean, they're probably trying to say, don't patronize us with something stupid. But look, I offer this. Mustang Sally, if you go back and listen to the original version with Wilson Pickett, fabulous song. Learn to play it well,
Yeah.
and you might enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of great harmonies. There's lots of cool rhythms and stuff that you can do to make it a lot more interesting.
Yeah. But we picked what did we pick? Money, Pink Floyd. You never hear anybody play that because
Right.
it's too hard for them to play. But we picked songs like that were really well known. That at least the 50 to 60-year-olds are gonna know all of these 70s tunes, and they were fun for us to play. And they were exciting enough for a bar. We didn't play 19 ballads in a row.
Right.
Where it's just
Right.
boring.
But how do you dance to Money?
Well, you don't. Yeah. So
I'm not saying
yeah.
you shouldn't do the song.
Oh yeah.
I'm saying that's maybe one you like to do and you want to do.
I know.
But you got to sprinkle it in the Brick Houses and
Right.
the Mustang Sallies.
Yeah.
And that's how you. And then gradually, if you find a following, that will follow you wherever you go.
Then
to
it's-
play what you love to play,
Yeah.
then you're home free.
Mhm.
Then you can, the KO Pectones do a nice job of that.
Mhm.
They do some unusual. Their stuff's not all dance stuff. It's, and they do a wonderful job, recreating all those old songs that, or FM radio back in the '70s. That,
You have more of a dance crowd than some of the other blues, some of the other even blues bands, but some of the other jams. Because I see all sorts of people dancing at the
Yeah.
Firehouse. So you guys got to kind of keep that in mind, huh?
Yeah. Well, just remember, we're not a blues jam. We're a blues-oriented jam.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best description. We do lots of rock tunes. I mean,
Right.
I do lots of Cream. you know, Clapton, you know, Allman Brothers, stuff that's not straight up blues. And I think when you talk about straight up blues, you're talking about a slow blues tune, you know, which is very simple at its core. But do too many of those in a row, you know, people are starting to look at their watch and, you know, that kind of thing. But that's because we do a lot of danceable stuff.
Yeah.
We want to do a lot of danceable stuff. It's good for the bar, number one.
Yeah.
And it brings people. We have a lot of people at the firehouse that come every week just because they just like to come hear the music and they like to eat a little something and get up and dance. And it's early. You know, we're 7:30 to 10:30.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's changed over the years. I've noticed is the gigs are getting earlier. It's probably because we're getting older. And the crowd that wants to hear what we want to hear, you know, we finish at 10:30, and at 10:30, a lot of times that place.
It's
Pretty
2/3. Yeah, it's
and it gets to be
2/3
9:30
full
and
or
10.
less.
Everybody's like,
yeah.
"Oh boy, I better get home." You know, so that's just what a musician has to work around, you know, in this town.
Yeah. That's cool, man. So let's talk a little bit about the open jam. So, I am always curious because all of us have all sorts of opinions about open jams and what's great about them and what is, you know, could be tweaked or whatever. But somebody said, who was it? One of these guys that interviewed said something interesting, how when he was in a band, he didn't really feel like he was actually in the scene. You know, he's in the scene because he's out there playing, but when he's gigging with his own band, he only sees his band. But when he was running an open jam, all of a sudden he felt like he was deep in the scene because he's seeing people so much. Is that fair? I mean,
It's more than fair. I mean, that's really the privilege of running a jam. It's
Yeah.
getting to meet all the players around town that, you know, hopefully you can attract them to your jam. If you've got good players, they'll come. We've had all the great players around town have been to the firehouse for our jam. It's been, and we very much appreciate it and respect that. So, but that's the cool thing, is getting to meet all these different people that I never would meet unless I went out to their gig and you know, if they happen to be playing when I'm available. You know what I mean? Now I can see them all the time. I can go to other jams and meet more people. We have a huge group of people in this town that play music, and for many years I didn't know about all the guys in Independence. And then I was introduced to Terry Hancock, for instance, by Blake Hughes here in town. I was playing with him, and that opened up a whole new world of players out there. And then there's more over on the Kansas side. There's more on the Overland Park side. For a while, we had a jam session at McGuire's
or
Southern
87th,
Overland Park, and that was a whole new group of guys that came to that one as opposed to who came to the Firehouse, which is in North Kansas City.
Nobody's coming out to Blue Springs that aren't all the way. You know, I mean,
That's
once
a
in a
long
while,
trek.
it's a long.
You know, there is a jam out there.
There's two
a
now
couple
still,
of them, out there.
But that's a different crowd than Dave Hayes is at
That's
151st and Lou Allen's. You know,
Right.
It's just,
Totally different. So we have a large number of players in this town. We're lucky that way. But it also creates a lot of competition, you know, depending on how many venues we have.
Yeah.
So you know, it's not like we have an overabundance of gigs and not enough musicians. It's the opposite, and it's been the opposite for a long time.
Yeah. And I keep saying this, I'm 100% fan of the jams. I mean, it's probably the biggest reason why I don't have a name or anything in town yet, but it's the only reason why I can even do this show of meeting all these people I have is because of our jam scene. Right. And that's, you know, it's, as you would agree, it's our biggest, or it's the biggest benefit of our scene with doing jams is to getting to meet all these people.
And that's really how I started. If you remember back earlier, I said, you know, when I was going down to Blaney's, you know, on a Monday night, and I'm working, and that jam didn't start till 10. It went till 2, and they played for an hour first.
Yeah.
Before they got anybody up. So things have changed.
Yeah, right.
Things have changed, but it's a great way for a musician to get started in this town and figure out, you know, if first of all, if they can hang with, you know, the other players and be able to play, you know, and meet these people and figure out what it takes to become, you know, a musician in this town and a working musician.
Yeah. So like, and I've been just getting everybody's opinion on this because this is just one of my opinions, or I guess pet peeves about the jam. Is there's these guys that are kind of the house band quality kind of players, and like Dave Hayes would obviously, you would be in this category of the guys that can get up there and at jams hang with everything you're doing. And then there's another level of guys that are totally capable of being up this jam right now, and they can handle pretty much everything you're getting. And then and this probably doesn't happen very much as I feel, but there's that other level of people that are a little bit kind of clueless about what their level is really, and they kind of think they're something, and then they get up there and they can't even do a shuffle or something, and I'm basically, completely trying to get you in trouble right here, but like what I've always had a theory about. It sort of reminds me of being a teacher where, the teacher has a huge amount of responsibility on this situation right now of how much they can impact it. But eventually the students got to come to them at some point, so there's a little bit on both. And that's my general opinion about the house band and then the jammers, is that there's still kind of both that needs to be happening. Do you think that there should be a baseline of ability before you get up at an open jam? And you can punt if you don't feel like out in yourself or whatever.
I mean, I think you need to have a clue about your instrument. I think you need to be able to at least follow and be able to play along with, at a minimum, 3-chord blues, shuffles, and simple rock tunes. And any player who's getting started, at that level where they want to start playing, going out to a jam, and can I cut it? You can go on YouTube and find backing tracks.
Those are wonderful,
And
aren't
I
they?
use them all the time.
Yeah.
And you can use them to learn how to improvise in all kinds of different keys. You can learn how to comp along, chording and rhythms and all that stuff.
They sound good too, don't they?
They're really good. And they're not going to be you might be able to find more complicated ones, and I just haven't looked for them.
Yeah.
But I'll typically do a guitar backing track or a blues backing track, just because I use it for practice.
Sure.
Just to keep my, for keep my fingers, limber and stuff, for just personal practice. But it's a great way to learn. It doesn't cost anything, So you can do a lot of you can learn how to play like Eric Clapton if you want to. I mean, there's lots of instructional videos. So do some preparation before you go to a jam, so you have a clue. So when somebody calls off, blues shuffle in the key of C, you know what to do.
Yeah.
So you won't be embarrassed.
Yeah.
And if you come to my jam and you struggle like that, this is probably what I would say to you. I'd probably pull you aside and say, you could really benefit from spend some time on YouTube.
Yeah.
Along with going to a teacher. There's nothing like going to a teacher.
Yeah.
I had great teachers in my path, So I'm not saying you shouldn't go get some serious one-on-one instruction.
Sure.
But while you're sitting around, watching a football game or, whatever, turn on YouTube and play along.
Yeah.
Learn how to play along. Learn how to get started.
Because, and I totally 100% agree with that. I had a guy, and I won't mention his name, but he's a jazz player in town, and he put out a very, very spirited Facebook post one time about, he's like, he said, jams are for professionals and serious students, was his argument he was basically making. And I didn't quite agree with he's making it, that these people should be coming, these shouldn't, was his argument. But I 100% agree with him to the general premise of what you said of, maybe you should have a clue before you get up on the stage right now. A little bit of a clue,
Right.
But we all know that every one of our first jams sucked terribly, all of us. We all had our first one, so I'm sitting here like understanding that we all have to start somewhere, and I didn't know a ton of songs when I got into town. I don't think it was really talent-wise. I'd already played 25 years before I got into these jams, but Mustang Sally, I've never heard of that song before I got to Kansas City. a lot of '70s stuff I had, but all these blues, Thrill Is Gone, I never heard of that song.
Yeah.
And especially all the jazz standards, I never heard of any of those.
Right.
So going to the jams really helped learning those songs.
And I got to tell you,
Yeah.
if I go to a jazz jam, I'm clueless. I'm clueless at a jazz jam.
Yeah.
I don't know any jazz standards really. Maybe might find my way around a couple of them, but you know, there's a big difference between the jazz scene and the blues scene and the blues rock. I'll call it the blues/rock scene because
it is. Yeah.
that's just what it is.
Yeah.
You can't play all blues in this town except in a few places. BB's maybe. You've got to have something besides the blues to complement it, and blues-oriented rock's the ideal thing.
Sure.
So that's what everybody uses.
Yeah.
But the jazz scene's a completely different scene
Yeah.
with completely different players.
Yeah. I
You know,
agree.
and we go back to the same deal. If jazz guy comes to a blues jam, when he plays the blues, he's going to sound like a jazz guy trying to play blues. He's going to have all that other extra stuff in there, scale type stuff, which is fine. It's talent. You know, the guys that do that are very talented, but that's not the blues. And if I walk into a blues jam, it's going to be that or worse. You know, I'm going to sound like I'm trying to play the blues to whatever the jazz standards are. You know, so.
Yeah. So I guess my last question on that is that because you hit it, what I was trying to get at, what is the, in your eyes, what is the responsibility of the house band to that player? Not the jazz guy, but the guy who gets up there and he he is doing this. He's at this threshold where he's now like kind of pissing you guys off, or he's kind of ruining the jam. And you know, we won't say his name, but you and I know who we're talking about. You know, who's, you know, I'll be nice and not say his name, but the person you and I know who we're talking about, his isn't talent level. He's plenty talented to be up on stage, but when they either don't have that talent level or they are doing extracurricular things that are, I always
playing well with others, maybe is a good way to say it.
Yeah, and but you know what I'm trying to say. Like I think that there's a lot of house bands, because they want people to come and because they don't want to piss people off and because it's all about bringing the people and stuff. I feel like once in a while they'll let stuff go a little bit. And what's your feeling on that?
It's a sticky wicket.
Yeah.
Is what I would say. I mean, I think people are a little nicer. I mean, back in the early days when I was going to jam sessions, those house bands were a lot less nice. You know, you sound like crap.
Get the hell
They
out of
just
here.
get you off the stage. I've even heard them just say, "Get out and don't come back." You know, so I just am not going to do that to somebody.
Yeah, that's keeping it real.
I mean, unless they've come in and they're being an asshole,
Right.
then I will do what I need to do. And
Yeah.
as the house band, I'm going to try to answer your question.
Yeah.
What's my responsibility as the house band
Yeah.
to people who come to the jam? And that is to give them a good experience. You know, and I'm going to try to match up players. It's an art form to match up players to play with each other. I don't know if any other jam hosts talk about this. They probably do, or they do it automatically.
Is that easy? That's not
If
as
you know
easy
the players, it
yeah.
can be. It can. You know. I've kind of gotten kind of good at it because I kind of know who does kind of work together if they've been there before. But if it's a player who is inexperienced, then I'm not going to put them up with. That guy belongs with the house band
Yes.
to help him sound better, encourage him. Point out when it's time for him to take a solo, and give him plenty of time.
Yeah.
You know, because if he's inexperienced, he may need to hit a foot switch, or he may need to turn something up, or you know. So if you're pairing up players, and somebody like, there's a lot of times I've had guys come in and say, I don't want to play with that guy, or don't get me up with him, or whatever. And so I try to accommodate that as best I can.
I always give people heck. Don't be trying to get out of that.
Yeah.
You
I
see three
commented,
guys come up to
yeah,
you. Oh well, yeah, I'll get up on the next one. You're like, don't be trying to get out of that.
Yeah, and sometimes I accommodate if I can, but if I'll always play with the guy that maybe is challenging to play with and try and make him better. Probably, there's one pet peeve I have
What's that?
in the jam world, and we kind of had some issue at the firehouse.
Please mention
with it.
names.
Well, they'll know
Trying
who
to
they
get you-
are if they
oh, yeah,
watch
yeah.
this interview. But we have a little bit of an issue, or at least my jam has had a little bit of issue with horn players. And I'm not saying the players aren't good; they are good players, and they sound really good when they get up, like three of them, and form a a nice little horn section.
Full orchestra.
Well, there's lots of great horn band songs. But if I've already got a guitar player and a harp player up there, plus, the three-piece band, maybe a keyboard, and then, my pet peeve with them is they just come in, take their horn out, and just walk up on the stage and start playing. Now I've crowded out my guitar player over here, who may be someone who's in more of a beginning stage, and he's, completely covered up by the horns because they're doing all these horn parts. And another thing is, it tends to get loud. So I've had a little bit of issue with that. And I
Yeah.
hope these guys, if they're listening to this, understand that I love them. But come in and be a pro and play some songs and then go sit down for a while. They tend to want
Right.
to stay up the whole night and
They accidentally stay up
stay
there.
up the whole night, and it's kind of been a little bit of a. And I probably have pissed some of them off. We haven't had some horn players for a while,
Yeah.
but
So
that's
yeah.
one more thing I want
Yeah,
to say
so
about a
good.
jam session. And what do I owe them? I owe you an opportunity to play to a crowd of people, not to tables and chairs, but to a crowd of people. If you sound like crap or you're too loud or whatever, that crowd's going to leave. And if the crowd leaves, the musicians are going to go, "This isn't the place to be tonight."
Yeah.
And you came in. I had this thing rolling. You came up here and screwed it up. I owe you the chance to play, but I don't owe you the chance to, destroy the jam
Yeah.
or destroy the evening.
Yeah.
So your time up might be kind of short.
Yeah. Yeah, because like that's what I keep coming back to because I think I probably have a lot more, maybe like your older guys that you're saying that they're just going to say whatever they're thinking. They don't really care about the other guy's feelings. I probably am more like that than other people are willing to be. But like to this club owner right now, this isn't a happy fun time. This is a show, right? At least not to the jammers, but to the club owner. Like this is a show. You know what I mean? There's people in my bar like paying for meals and stuff.
That's
and
right.
so,
I've got wait staff. I got expenses.
yeah,
This needs to work. If
This
this
needs to
night is
work.
not going to be a winner for me, I'm going to reconsider whether I want to continue doing it.
and that's where I come back to with the idea of what is the relationship of the house band to the jammers, because I'm like, we've all seen the jams that last about 4 months and then they're done. Typically, my opinion is the house band is okay players. They end up drawing pretty average playing jammers, and then nobody shows up. And so it's the cyclical effect of everything working together like that. And so my argument to that would be if we keep allowing, if this jam keeps allowing this quality of player to get up at their jam, if they do have a choice, they only got 3 jammers coming, then they got to do what they got to do, but it is on the other hand.
But if you had a guy like that who comes in and maybe he's not a great singer and maybe he's not a great guitar player, and what you do is you put your best guys around him and make him sound good.
Yeah. A lot of
That's-
times he
that's
starts
how you-
sounding better too because he has stability with his
Yeah.
rhythm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on that is that, on the other hand, wanting to be hardcore about this and kind of hardline, there is the other side of, you just mentioned it a couple minutes ago, some of these guys are retired, and like, I'm going to be the guy to basically strike down this guy's greatest love. You know what I mean? That's another way to look at it.
Yeah.
Where I'm pissed off because I'm trying to, as myself, I'm trying to hustle. I want these guys are having fun, and I get that, and I need to be flexible. But I'm trying to hustle. I'll tell everybody. I want everybody in this room to know who I am. I want to get known by every single musician in this town. So when I get up there, I want to literally say, I'm not having fun. I'm not here for fun. Just me. I'm here to play the best that I want this whole situation to be the best possible situation, quality-wise, so that everybody can see how good I can play. And I need to be flexible, but at the other hand, this is all these guys do, and I'm gonna be the one to like destroy their whole moral sense of their life. You know what I mean?
Well,
That's pretty weak of me, right?
You're basically saying what is completely true about a jam session. It is the best networking session you can get in the music business.
Yeah.
Is to attend a jam session. You will meet people. Club owners attend jam sessions. They know each other. They go to each other's clubs, and they see somebody, and hey, that guy's really good. You got a band,
It's great. It's
And
great
another
written
thing,
words,
it's just really interesting
Yeah.
because I forget about some of these things that I realize, but there are a lot of guys like me who have retired now have the actual time to spend on this, and they're still not too old to do it. And a lot of these guys haven't played for years like I have around town. Maybe they've always just played in their basement, or they've been working on this type of music for a long time, and they'd like to take it out now. Boy, I'd like to put together a band and play now that I'm retired. I don't have to get up and go to work anymore. I've got time to practice. I got time to run around and try to get gigs. I got,
Takes a while to do that, doesn't it? You have to
yeah,
have
and I
time.
want to be somebody while I'm, got my final 20 years. I figured in terms of my final 20 years, I'm 61, so what do I want out of life? And what do these guys want? They want to come and play in front of people, and get some feedback, some nice respect and feedback, appreciation, applause because let's face it, if you can get to the level of being able to play in front of people at a jam session, fitting in, you spend a lot of time on your instrument. You'd like to have something back for it, and that is applause, acceptance,
Recognition. Yeah. And some of those guys, that's another the one last thing I'll say on the jams is that's another good reason why the jams are so good is because some people don't have time for a band.
Right.
They just don't have time, but
right.
they do have time on a random Tuesday night to come out to a random jam in town, and so that's cool.
And maybe they meet some guys that they can actually put something together with, and maybe they play once a month around town or periodically. But that's a lot because now you're working towards a gig. You got to get the stuff together. Do I have lights? Do I need lights? All the stuff that goes on outside just the music.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I'm glad we got to talk about the jams because I know it's something that we're obviously both, passionate about, and we both attend them a lot. And,
there are people who don't like them.
Yeah.
There are people who think musicians and bar owners are getting free music. I just don't see it that way. I see it as a networking opportunity.
Yeah, they're not. If they pay the house band, they're not getting free music.
Right.
In general,
And
they're paying somebody, but
and believe me, no one's doing it for free. No house band is playing for free.
Yeah.
If they are, they ought to have their heads examined. I'm sure they're not.
But this is a great experience. I mean, I know there is a lot of guys that are maybe really hardcore about music, where that is just something that, like somebody like myself, where I have if I had the choice, I would choose to always play with like your house band, Dave Hayes' house band. If I had the choice every time, I would ask to get up with just your house band because there's just more songs you can play. The quality is better. The cueing is like butter. Everything just runs so smooth. And I understand that, that they're maybe at a point in their life where, I don't want to be, their mentality might be, I don't want to be like a babysitter anymore, right? I'm ready to do the real thing. I'm tired of waiting here for this guy to learn what his C sharp diminished seventh is.
Right.
I've already known this crap for 20 years.
Right.
I'm just tired of dealing with little Billy, that was so good. Good job. I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
Yeah, I just feel like you have to be patient. Someone was patient with me, believe me. So if that's all I got I can give back, I'm happy to do it.
Good.
And another thing, you know, I say to these guys that think it's taking work away from regular working bands is, you know, not everybody has 30 or 40 or 50 people that'll show up every time they play. You know, a jam puts butts in the seats.
Any of your guys' jam, you can guarantee 10, like just jammers.
You would
can
think, yeah. You know, if
Or
you
seven
get,
or
if
whatever,
you get four
whatever.
or five guys that play, you know, some of them bring their girlfriends or, you know, yeah, it helps if you don't have a big following. Plus, there's only so much of a following to go around of people who want to go out and hear live music. There's also DUI laws. They keep lowering that, you know, the amount you can have in your system. I mean, there's lots of stuff to be concerned about there. So, you know, if you're playing in this town regularly, you know, you know, there's lots of reasons you are. You got to have a good venue, and you got to produce a good product.
That's cool, man. I got two more quick ones here for you. We've talked already about a ton of different random, you know, advice, but what is your probably biggest piece of advice for, and I'm specifically talking about like kind of the 20 to 30-year-olds that are starting to get into this gigging scene or be a professional musician. Do you have any, you know, maybe a biggest piece of advice for those people?
I guess it would be know your market. I mean, you're not going to be just a musician. I mean, if you're the good players get the calls, you know.
Right.
The rest of us, you know, we got to figure out how to make this happen. So you've got to find the right players who are willing to work with you. And quite frankly, if they're really good players, don't want to rehearse.
Yeah.
You know, these guys want to be in the garage, and I mean, we've all been through this. They start in the garage, and you try to find the right players, and your organ takes a long time to build up. Used to be 40 songs.
Right.
4 sets, 40 songs,
Yeah.
10 songs a set. So you'd have to work up that many and learn all the parts and find the players, and then the players would float in and out, and you don't have any gigs, and they're like, this guy's nowhere. You know, this is how you get nowhere.
Right.
As a musician,
Right.
you need to know. You go out and find a gig. Well, if you haven't done anything yet, you know, I think you need to go through that process of putting together at least a couple hour show, and try to find a gig that'll do that. Even if you might have to play for free, a couple times, just to get out there and see what it's like to play in front of people. That's what a jam is so good for.
Yeah.
Playing in front of people.
Yeah.
You can't just sit there and look at your shoes. You got to be somewhat of an entertainer. People are going to get tired of you.
Is a bunch of guys in a garage, is that really a band?
It's a garage band.
I always think it's like if you're
We've all been in them.
Oh yeah, sure, we've all been in them. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a band is a group of musicians that plays out in public, that actually has gigs. To me, that's a bunch of guys in a basement.
Yeah.
You know, that's my opinion.
With no gigs.
With no gigs.
And
know,
so
like-
you're not going to attract the good players
Yeah.
because they're going to go where they get paid to be
Yeah.
out in front of people.
Yeah, I mean, like I know you were talking about kind of know your market and kind of be sort of, so you talked about two things. You talked about sort of knowing your market, and then you talked about kind of having your ducks in a row a little bit, right? I mean, you're talking about kind of have this
My
general
kids will tell
set
you I
list.
say
Yeah.
ducks in a row all the time.
Yeah,
It's
and-
one of my favorite
yeah.
sayings.
How many of us don't, like in
Lots
not
of
in the musical sense, but in all the other stuff, the finding your market, the
Yeah.
booking the gig, like that to me would be my biggest thing to, because especially for all of us coming out of like academia, we're taught to play music beautifully. All this other crap, we don't know anything about any of that. You know, I mean, we know how to play, you know, great vibrato, right? We know how to
Right.
play in perfect pitch and perfect, but saying jokes to an audience, how do you come at a bar owner, you know? Did you even write down how much money you made last year? You know, little stuff like that. You
Yeah.
know, what bars would your band fit per? You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean,
There's a lot of business that
Yeah.
goes along with the music, and you know, you probably ought to be researching that along with your practice of your instrument.
Yeah, basically
what you wanna
business
do.
side is basically yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Which is
sum
not
that
fun.
up. No.
In this town, the business side of the music business is no fun at all. Period.
It gets fun when you have done, you know, when you got 100 gigs under your belt and you're a Dave Hayes or something. You can walk into anywhere and be like, yeah, I can guarantee you 20 people every single time I come into your bar, and they're like, oh, okay, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Well,
Oh,
the problem with that
you know.
is that people go into bars and say that and then don't come through.
Yeah,
So then the guy who can doesn't get believed.
yeah, yeah.
So that's what your competition will do for you. You know that's the downside of competition is you've got guys that'll play really cheap, and if they can bring in and fill up the bar owner doesn't give a shit how good the really.
Yeah.
Most of them don't care as long as it's
Yeah.
not horrible. If you can fill my bar up, your musicianship doesn't have to be top notch.
Right. Now Dave can prove it though. I mean, he can prove it by anybody going to his jam, and they okay, this place is full like every single time. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good piece of advice,
Yeah.
man. Because I think that's what happened with our band too. Is the knowing your market. We didn't really know where we would fit because we were a weird kind of jammy.
Yeah.
Jam band rock jazz thing, and we don't really fit anywhere, so we didn't
you
know what to
fit-
do.
But you can fit in there if you can fill their bar up.
Yeah.
So you got to do some marketing of your
Right.
own. You've got to do probably some free shows to get people to come out and at least see you
Mm-hmm.
and want to come see you somewhere.
Mm-hmm. You can't do a live show video until you do a live show.
That's right.
Cool, man. So, last thing I got for you is, can you? I've been trying to end every show on this because I think gig stories are just hilarious, and everybody has a decent one, or do you have just a moment in even in a band or a gig or whatever that was just like kind of a completely ridiculous moment that was just awesome.
Yeah.
Just awesomely
Or
or
how
awesomely
awesome it
bad.
was, but
Awesomely bad.
This is happened many years ago. I'm going to say this happened in like the early '80s, and you know we were playing wherever we could play, and we got this gig at 8th and Tracy called Night After Night, and it was nicknamed Fight After Fight. I mean, it was a pretty grungy place, but we really enjoyed playing there, and the people, the clientele, really liked us. And it was kind of a long, rectangular shaped bar. And on one end of it was a couple pool tables, and then the bar ran along the side, and then towards the back is where the band was in the corner. There was a dance floor and stuff, and there was a back door. And a lot of firemen would go into this place, you know, to have drinks after work, what have you. We're playing one Friday night, and you know, we started at 9, so those guys had been there a while. And because of the area was not the greatest area, they would allow them to park their motorcycles in the bar. So I'm playing, singing something, can't remember what. This guy decides to go home and fires up his motorcycle and drives through the bar, attempting to go out the back door here. The back door wasn't open, so he takes a left and he runs into the stage. I move my microphone stand, he hits the stage, backs up, kind of wobbly, and drives out the back door. So that's probably the one I'm like, boy, I almost got hit while playing on stage.
So it was like this, huh?
Yeah, I'm standing there playing, he's coming right at me. I stepped aside and moved my microphone stand, and he hit the stage with the front wheel and kind of was dazed and backed up and drove out the back door.
Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you.
It's one of many, but
yeah.
that's one of
Wow.
my favorites. Yeah.
That's funny. Paul Greenlease, will tell his story again. He was playing with Danny Montero at
Yeah.
a gig, and they're playing. Back door flies open, and he said, "Guy runs through." 2 seconds later, cops run through, guns drawn.
Oh my
right, this
God,
was
yeah.
80s or 90s or
Yep.
something, and he said it was seriously like this. They're playing.
Yeah.
And then back playing. I was like, because the guy ran through and then out, so they were just,
Yeah.
you know, so it was, you know, took
Yeah.
the whole sequence was 5 seconds long,
Yeah.
you know, and then they chased him. I was like, oh my gosh,
I hope you don't get caught in the crossfire.
Oh man, yeah. But I can't imagine like these guys telling the 20s stories, right, and 40s, or even you
Yeah.
guys talking about how the 70s was and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds like that was just
Yes.
out of control. Even the jazz guys, they were talking about doing matinee show, right? Then they do the early night, then they do the late night, and then they'd go like down to the foundation
Right.
at 2 in
Play
the
all
morning
night.
after, and then get their nice little 2 hours sleep, and then they're back to their matinee
Right.
again, and that just seems
Right.
like nuts to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good old days, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
well, cool, man. What else you got? You got anything? Got anything else or?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I just, if anybody who comes to our jams or comes to hear us play, I really appreciate your coming to see us in whatever form it is, whether you're just listening or whether you're playing. You know, we want to do more of that. I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna try to find another jam in the Overland Park area on a different night, so I can have the Thursday. We have a north and a south jam. I'd like to do that again. We've had a pretty good deal going at McGuire's, and I just haven't been able to find a place that will give it a try.
Yeah, God, the only one I know is Dave's on Tuesday at Llewellyn's.
Right.
I mean, Jerry's jam night, but that's not blues. You know,
Well, see, that's another scene. That's a rock
Right,
scene.
right.
I mean, if you want to play, you know, Loverboy or Guns N' Roses, go to his jam.
Yeah.
It's a good jam. He's a
Yeah.
great player. I mean, I've seen what he's posted, you know, but the players go there, want to play that kind of stuff.
Sure, that's great. That's
And those
great,
guys
yeah.
don't really fit at my place, and I wouldn't fit probably at his place. I might be able to do some old REO Speedwagon.
Oh sure, well,
But that's
you,
about
you
it.
would, but a lot of the jammers wouldn't. You know, I mean, you could get up there and do "Can't You See" with them, or some random, you know, bunch of
Yeah.
the random rock tunes. You know, I
Right.
mean, it would go
Right.
great. But
Yeah.
well, cool, man. One more time, we got Christine's Firehouse on Thursdays.
Every Thursday
right?
night, 7:30 to 10:30.
Yeah.
We play for 30 minutes, and then we get the jam rolling pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
That's good. That was another thing we didn't really talk about. Of a lot of guys accidentally
It's the way
doing
it used
hour.
to be. You do an hour, maybe, and then take a 30-minute break.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you really running a jam session? Maybe you really aren't. You know, maybe you're just
Having look at me time, and then you
Exactly.
accidentally get the jammers up
Exactly.
at some point.
yeah. And I don't think that's very respectful to the guys that have.
I'm
come
with
to
you, man.
see you.
Yeah.
So that's why we do it that way. I mean, I want. If I did nothing but jam sessions, I'd probably be okay. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I do jams and I do a few gigs around town on top of it, and that's in my retirement. You know, that works for me. I have a golf habit during the day, so you know, I want my.
You got to get that
Has to
itch,
be
that little
free.
golf habit.
Well, if I'm playing a gig at night, I'm probably not going to play golf during the day because
Sure,
you
yeah.
know that takes a lot out. Like I said, it's a long night.
Oh yeah, sure.
Doesn't seem like it to people, but it is.
But I'm glad that house bands do a couple of songs. I'm like totally down with that. 3 or 4 tunes, 5 tunes, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then because you need to, for people who've never come, you want to sort of show them what this is going to be,
Right.
right? I mean,
Well,
you
and you're
know,
setting the tone for the type of music that's going to be played. You
right.
know? So we try to do a kind of a variety of stuff, and
Yeah.
with having this thing for, you know, almost 4 years, we got a pretty good following of folks that know what's going to happen when they
Right.
come, and they come because they really enjoy the fellowship of playing with the players that come. We have a lot of really good players that come. So.
Yeah. That's great, man. That's all we got.
Okay. Thank you.
Casey Music Talk. We got Steve Andrew here. Come check his jam out at the Firehouse every Thursday. So, we got Dave Hayes coming in here, and a whole bunch of more musicians and teachers and whatever on Casey Music Talk. So, take it easy.